Luke here with another battle report for you guys. Vampires came out last week, and I spent most of the time in between when they came out and now painting up old models, assembling new models, reading through the rules, and just drooling over the vampires. They're always my first love. So when it came time for Friday Night Warhammer, I was pretty excited to play them. My buddy came over and he played Ogres again, even though he always picks my Ogre army, even though he has Empire and High Elves himself. Apparently he just doesn't like he likes the multiple wounds and high toughness guys. So we threw down 2,000 points, made some lists quick, and ended up with a Watchtower scenario. Here's a picture right after deployment, before Vanguard movement. Vampires on the right, Ogres on the left, Watchtower in the middle. I actually ended up starting with some ghouls in the middle. I had 20 ghouls, so I was able to fit right in the Watchtower. Going down my lines, I've got 5 Direwolves, Terrorgeist. I've got, you got to bear with me here, I have a lot of proxy models because, especially in last edition, there wasn't that big of a need for a lot of zombies and skeletons. It was all ghouls. So I'm scrambling to pay for the really expensive models and paint them all up, and nobody wants to do that. It's just a pain in the butt. Games Workshop needs like a discount program for anything under 5 points. I don't want to pay $1 a point or, spend all my time painting up a bunch of zombies. But I digress. Unit on the right, 34 zombies, and I put a Banshee in there. There's 2 units in between these big blocks here. The front unit is a Corpse Cart with a Master Necromancer. That's the new Lord level Necromancer. He's level 4. I gave him the Rod of Flaming Death and put him on the Corpse Cart as his mount. Behind that, that's just like the top part of the Mortis engine. So that actually is the Mortis engine in the game, but it takes a lot of time to paint up all the pieces. You don't want to put that whole thing together and then try to paint it. So that's as much as I could lay down and balance up there. Eventually, we'll have the real thing there, but in terms of the game, we both just agreed it was really tall and you could see it from pretty much everywhere. And then to the left, I've got a unit of 35 skeletons. The guy on the corner there is a vampire. He's a level 1, lore of vampires. And I have the Dispel Scroll on him. And then you can't quite see it, but to the left, let me see, jump over here. You can see to the left there is a Cairn Wraith in there. And then a unit of 19 Graveguard and a White King. White King's a BSB. And they're just off on the flank. I jumped over this, but you can see I've got 20 ghouls in the Watchtower where I started. Going down his line, this is on his right flank. He's got 2 Saber Tusks, a unit of Ogres with the BSB, and a level 1 Lore of the Great Maw Butcher in there. Next is a bunch of Iron Guts, and there's his Slaughtermaster in there. And he has an Iron Blaster, a Thunder Tusk, 4 Mournfang, and I think they're just kitted out to have the 2+ armor save, 4 Lead Belchers, and 2 more Saber Tusks. So this is what the board looks like. Just one more shot. And I don't remember why I took that picture. So, Ogre turn 1, everyone in the middle pretty much just scooches up. No charges right here. The Mournfang move up enough just so they're touching the forest to find out what it is. Ends up being a Stupidity Forest. So I'll have to deal with that next turn. Lead Belchers move up and just get ready for some shots on the Graveyard. His Saber Tusk charge my Direwolves. One of them makes it. Turns out that Fulcrum sitting there is an Altar of Cain, so it's giving Frenzy. With Frenzy, he's able to kill 1, and then with CR, I lose 2 more dogs. That Altar actually becomes a really big problem for me, but we'll get to that. During shooting, he's able to... Let's see, his Iron Blaster puts a shot on the Mortis engine in the back there, but I was able to regen it. The Stone Thrower on the back of the Thunder Tusk lands a really good shot, like 21 hits on the skeletons, but was only able to kill 2. I mean, he just rolled a ton of crappy rolls. And the Lead Belchers shoot 1 Graveguard, so they also had some bad rolls. During Magic, it was pretty inert. He rolled for Grut Sickle, didn't die, but then his next roll on 2 dice was 2 1s, so kind of scared him. He almost rolled 2 1s there for getting his Slaughtermaster kill, but the Magic phase ended right there, so nothing more to speak of. And then that was pretty much it for Ogre turn 1. So, Vampire turn 1 is pretty much what you'd expect. Everyone just marches up, and everyone's pretty much within the 12 inches of the general. That's one of the new changes with the vampires in this book. You have to be within 12 of the general if you want to march, unless you're a unit that's strictly vampiric. So, like you're a Vargolf running around on your own, then you can march. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, vampires have this benefit of sticking near each other. All their spells are now burst spells, like Invocation to Heck will heal everyone in the range, and same with the Mortis Engine, the Corpse Cart, and all that stuff. But I mean, obviously, there's some danger with sticking together. But that's what's happening here. The zombies move up. They go into it's just a regular forest. They're going to try to get on the left side and tar pit and hold up that unit of ogres there. I'm going to send the skeletons on the right side. They're going to try to hold up whoever they can. That's where most of the action looks like it is. And then I'm going to try to support the ghouls who are in the Watchtower. The Corpse Cart and the Mortis Engine are chariots, so they can't march up, but they're still within range. During Magic, Invocation went off, and I was able to raise up 11 zombies. Those guys can be raised beyond their starting number just based on who they are. That's one of their rules. You can always do that. I had forgotten that my Necromancer Lord has Master of the Dead on him, so he could also raise skeletons beyond their starting size. I forgot about that and only healed up just a few. But that should have been a little bit better. And I also forgot that the Corpse Cart was letting me re-roll one of the dice for Invocation. So a lot of rules to keep in my mind there. I also forgot to roll for the Mortis Engine. At the beginning of every one of your turns, you need to roll to see the distance that its pulsing reliquary is going to shoot out this negative energy. It's going to hurt bad guys near you, and it's going to give you regen. So I forgot all about that till next turn. So I'm going to take some. I think I might have forgot about it for 2 turns. But basically, my guys should have regen and should be taking a few less wounds, but they don't, sadly. I was able to get the Flaming Rod off on the Mournfang, which did 1 wound. They passed their panic test, and then they were going to have to take wounds if they wanted to move next turn. The rest of everything was dispelled. I don't have any shooting because no one's close enough to scream at. And during close combat, the direwolves were wiped out by the frenzied Sabertusk. And so that's basically it for Vampires turn 2. I'm sorry, turn 1. For Ogres turn 2, the Mournfang charge through the forest. They don't take any dangerous terrain hits, and they don't get hit by the Flaming Rod spell. So that worked out really well for them, and they were able to pass their stupidity. The Sabertusk both are able to charge into the flank of the Graveguard, so that's going to suck. The Skeletons and Vampire and Cairnwraith get charged by the Thundertusk, and he's giving off that aura. Zombies are still fine, and on this flank, the Frenzied Sabertusk charges and makes it in to the flank of the Terrorgeist. During shooting, the Iron Blaster blew up the Corpse Cart. Honestly, I probably shouldn't have taken that as a mount for him, but I was kind of worried that he was going to be squishy, so I wasn't sure what unit I wanted to have him in. And I guess I got lucky that the Iron Blaster didn't kill the general. I mean, it had to roll, I think, 4 up would have killed the general as opposed to killing the mount. So the Corpse Cart's gone, so that means always strike first. Triggering from my vampire spells is not going to be going off, and I can't re-roll my dice for Invocation. That's all that happens during shooting. Everyone else is pretty much locked up. During close combat, we've got this was terrible. During close combat, the Graveguard just get destroyed. I forgot to give them great weapons, so they just had hand weapon shield, and they missed all their attacks, and they had plenty of attacks. They had the +1 to hit banner as well, and the White King also flubbed his attacks. And so basically, Mournfang stayed there, and then the Sabertusk overran. One Sabertusk was able to get into combat with the Skeletons. So this is a picture from next turn, but what happened in close combat here was the Thundertusk directed all of its attacks against the Vampire. And I was using him as a level 1 caster with the Dispel Scroll, and he wasn't very defensively kitted out, and he only had 2 wounds, so he poofed right there. And I've got to remember to make them more defensively kitted in the future. I also lost combat. I did a few wounds to him. I don't remember how many, but you can see my skeletons are whittled down a little bit. And on the flank, there's no picture of it, but the Terrorgeist he was charged by the Sabertusk, Sabertusk was frenzied, did a wound to him, and then with CR, I think I'm at 3 wounds on him right now. And so, I mean, he's in the flank of the Terror guy. So this is, he's getting rocked by this cat, and it's getting me a little sour at this point. So this picture here is the next turn. This is Vampire's turn 2. During movement, I shimmied out had the Banshee leave the zombies, and she's on the side of the skeletons there, and she's going to try screaming to give him some support on the flank. And move the Necromancer, he ran up to the front of the building. He's trying to hide from that Iron Blaster since it just blew up his corpse cart. During shooting, I was able to scream at the dog, but it didn't really help towards combat because I wasn't able to reform. It was happening in the shooting phase, so he's still going to get rear charged and could be in the same spot with this dog. And so it's really turning into a bloodbath for him. And I think he would have some wounds, but he wouldn't have as many as he has without that frenzied thing. He's not hitting on his frenzies. He's whiffed his attacks. Same with the Direwolves, did the same thing. So it's really just going against me here. He's kind of stuck. Close combat here is it's a draw. Even number of wounds out, so everyone sticks around. So Ogre's turn 3. The Mournfang declare a charge on the Mortis Engine. If you remember, there was that Sabertusk in the way, but he declared a charge on the skeletons. I had apparently thought that he wasn't going to move, so my Mortis Engine got charged just barely in the corner there by the Mournfang once all the charges were resolved. Over here, the Ogres charged the zombies who are in the forest, and the Iron Guts charged the Watchtower. Also, it's like I was worried about, the other Sabertusk charges the rear of the Terror guy. So I mean, I'm in some pain here because I've gotten charged and in the rear, and it's not my turn to scream at him. So this CR is really hurting this guy. And to be expected, the Sabertusk destroys him with combat res. He takes a wound, but he just poofs. And so 2 dinky dogs have taken out my Terror guys. I'm a little sour at this point. There was no shooting to speak of, but during Magic, he was able to get off Curse of Midnight Wind, the juiced up version, so all of my units are basically re-rolling their 6s, which is pretty painful because I'm relying on poison in that Watchtower to sink some wounds in. And he also gets off the +1 strength to the Ogre unit that's in combat with us. So this is a picture from the next turn, but during close combat, the Skeletons were able to beat the Thundertusk. I reformed them to help with the Mournfang and the Mortis Engine combat. I wasn't sure if it was the right call, but, you know, I need to help the Watchtower, but I don't think I'm going to be able to support them with a bunch of dink-doink skeletons there if they're not getting any help from the Mortis Engine. Even though the Necromancer's there, it might have been the wrong call, but that's what I made my choice with. During the combat with the Iron Guts and the Ghouls, I got obliterated. My Ghouls whiffed almost all of their attacks, and all the 6s I rolled had to be re-rolled. That turned it out all to be misses. I don't think I did a single wound on them. And between combat res and all that, there were 2 of them left. And I even had an advantage there because a lot of the combat res that would normally be there wasn't there because they were assaulting a Watchtower. And so I've still got 2 guys in the Watchtower, but it's looking pretty bleak. On the left side, the Ogres charged the zombies, and I think they got an Ogre charge off, and between all the wounds they dealt, their stomps, I think, and finally when combat res came in, I think over 30, 35 of them died. I mean, it was just a massive number. But, I mean, that's what they're supposed to do, is hold that up, so I'm not expecting too much else. Vampire's turn 3, not looking good, but I charge my skeletons into the flank of the Mournfang. That's, I think, it for movement. The Mortis Engine does its pulse, puts out regen on a bunch of the units, and I think it does 1 wound to the Mournfang, so that was better than nothing. During shooting, the Mortis Engine's Banshee Scream kills another Mournfang, so and puts a wound on the remaining, so that's looking good. During Magic, I got Invocation off and was able to heal a decent amount of skeletons back. I mean, I think that's like, what, 2 ranks? You can see there's some more ghouls in the Watchtower and some more skeletons. I tried to use Van Hells to move the Banshee into the tower, but he dispelled that. I figured that was probably my only way to stop what was going to happen in there, was to have an ethereal unit that they couldn't remove, but that got dispelled. And I was able to get Curse of Years off on the Iron Guts. Those are the guys assaulting the tower right now. During close combat, we win by 3 and break him, but we don't have time to chase him. We got to get our asses to the Watchtower. So we just reformed to do just that. And all but one of the zombies were killed. I was laughing pretty hard at that. One lone zombie standing up those ogres, and they weren't going to get to move or help. I mean, there wasn't much they could do anyway because their unit of choice was already assaulting the building, but it was still kind of fun. So during the ogre's turn, this is for the Mornfang rally and the Sabertusk rallies, and the far one just books it towards the end of the board still. During Magic, he's able to get off Curse of Midnight Wind again, the burst version. I can't really stop him, so I'm having to reroll 6s again, which is pretty painful. During shooting, his Iron Blaster blows up the Mortis engine. It lands a shot right on it, and I wasn't able to regen it, and so that thing poofs. This is starting to be the game here. But as the coup de grace, he charges his Sabertusk into my Banshee, who doesn't do any wounds back. And with combat resolution, he can't hurt her because she's ethereal, but with combat res from charging and her not doing a wound, she explodes and he overruns into my Necromancer. And so it's just freaking painful to watch this thing here. And so this is basically it. This is how the game ends. We call it at this point. Well, actually, it looks like we played the rest of it out, and he stomped out those ghouls in the tower, and they had to reroll 6s anyway. So my Necromancer's about to die for sure, and my skeletons are basically the only ones left, and so we called the game. It was a really good game. It was fun to play the vampires. I very much enjoyed them. They were my first love in Warhammer, and I think they're way better now. They've fixed a lot of the overpowered stuff, and seems to have a bunch of different themes that are fairly balanced. Like you can play kind of like I did with large groups. Hopefully, play it better. There's a lot of cavalry you can play with, or there's kind of more the ghoul and the ghoul king routes and the Vargeists and all those types of things. So I found myself trying to figure out what I wanted to play when I was putting this army list together and having to choose. So I threw as many heroes in there because I wanted to kind of get a feel for them. But there's a lot of things I want to try. It's a bit of a mixed bag because I found myself having to struggle to put vampires in a 2,000 points game. Necromancers were by far the clear choice. Vampires can do a lot of stuff, but they're so costly, especially on the Lord level if you want to have a level 4 caster. And kitting them out with their vampire powers as well. I mean, I think they've made the distinction that the casters are more necromancers and the vampires are more the fighters, but I don't think I'm going to see a lot of vampire casting until I get to higher points games. But that's just an initial impression, so it could be wrong. But I like them. I really do. Hopefully, if they're played without as many mistakes as I made, I think they're going to be really competitive. But I got hammered pretty hardly. The Ogres played solid and won, but both my flanks got tied up, outmaneuvered, and just destroyed. Outmaneuvered on the Terrorgeist side, and just completely poor rolling on the Graveguard side. And then with nothing left to support them, they just kind of crumbled. So it'll be interesting to play them again. I think it'll be fun, especially with Ogres. It's going to be painful to survive all that shooting, but the vampires were thoroughly stomped, squished, pounded into the ground, turned to dust, and the Ogres won the Watchtower. So it was a good game, and thanks for watching.